Management, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Taste of Vino Masterclass, led by myself, Mario Sehic. Hope all of you are good. Hope all of you have some wines in front of you, and hope some of you have received the samples, which I've sent as well. So today's topic is all about wine, introduction to wine tasting, and that is one of my favorite topics. Wine has become so amazingly fashionable and popular like never before. So basically, let me just check something. I have a small problem here. Wine has been made for a very long time. It's okay now. Wine has been made for a very long time, some 7,500 years that we know of. We're going to discuss a little bit of that as well later on, but never ever has been as fashionable or popular like right today. So many factors contribute to this amazing popularity of the wines. One of them is, of course, food, explosion in fine dining. Not this year, but in the last good number of years as well. And wine and food and wine always has been produced to complement each other. So Michelin star restaurants have influenced in a big way popularity of the wines, but also the basically popularity of the food and popularity of the wine. Wine has influenced food too. So that's a big factor which contributes to this amazing popularity of the wines like never before. Another factor as well is this health aspect. We are getting now every couple of weeks, really, the more and more scientific researches which tells us that drinking wine is actually good and healthy for us, is beneficial. So good news is it's today's doctor recommendations. So we have to drink wine every single day. They say regular drinking is increasing one part of the liver, which is very beneficial for us as well. So regular drinking every single day is now today's doctor's recommendation. So wine is good and healthy for us. But like with anything which is too good to be true, there's more catch. And in this case, it's moderation. So the doctors are saying that's all true, it's healthy, it's beneficial, but basically moderation is the key. So they're saying 2 glasses of wines a day is called moderation. So some people are doubling that, some people are even tripling that doctor's recommendation, but basically that's about half of the bottle every day, and in that case it is proved to be very beneficial for us. So also wine has become so amazingly prestigious like never before. I mean, the wines on some auctions, the sale prices, it's like crazy. The most expensive single bottle of wine sold 2 years ago in New York at auction. I think it was Christie's auction in November 2 years ago. And a single bottle of wine sold for $543,000 US. That's kind of crazy amount of money that somebody has parted with, but that proves this amazing popularity of the wines and prestige connected with some wines like never ever before. So wine has become something special, and we're going to today discuss in more details all about wine, how it's made, differences, different styles and all of that. Please do use the chat box below to tell me where you are joining from and what kind of wines you're having. You know, you can join with any wine. Basically, we're going to go through the how we taste wine section as well. Or if you are having samples, you know, you can use them at your own leisure. Also there is a chat and question box next to it. So any questions you might have, I'm going to attempt to answer them towards the end of this masterclass. So let me start my presentation, and let me tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to discuss origins of wines. We're going to discuss a little bit about what's happening in a year in a vineyard, what kind of things are going on over there, why wines are different styles of the wines. Very important part for me is always how to taste wine. Lots of people are drinking wines, but very few people are tasting wines, and there is a big difference between those two terms. And as always, importance of food. So basically, food for me is the key. I don't believe that any of the wines have been intentionally made throughout history without thinking of some kind of food. So we're going to discuss all of that. Basically, as I was mentioning, we know that wine has been made firstly roughly about 7,500 years ago. We know exactly where that happened. It was in Georgia, former Russian Republic, on border with Iran, former Persia. So we know that wine has been made for at least 7,500 years. Probably as a happy accident. Probably people have been picking grapes, eating grapes, and leaving some grapes in some vessels for a few days and forgetting about them, and then coming back to it, and miracle has happened, and they have been happy ever after that. So then Greeks and Romans have put the wine production, especially Romans throughout Europe, in, you know, they introduced winemaking techniques throughout France, Italy, Spain, throughout Europe as well. So wine has been made for a very, very long time. You can see this photo here. It's from 3rd century before Christ, from Spain. At that time, that was under Romans. And you can see these people are stomping on the grapes bare feet. Some people still do that, especially in Portugal, in the city of Porto. They have those concrete built kind of pools, which they call lagares, and they would be picking grapes during the day and then chucking them into these big concrete pools. And when the night comes, music on, and they would be inviting wives, girlfriends, and everybody else, and they would be dancing bare feet and therefore crushing grapes that way. So there is reason for why they did that, and funnily enough, they knew that for a very long time. With your bare feet, you can't crush seed or pip in a grapes, and you don't release bitterness. So there's even now a machine called robolagares, I think, which imitates people's feet and gentleness, not to crush the pips inside the grape. So very long history in regards of the winemaking, as old as civilization, basically. So most important part comes from the grapes. Grapes are basically about 75% of the water is in there, and sugars, but the most important parts of grapes intended for the winemaking are actually skins. Lots of important things are found in skins, especially in red grapes. Substances like tannins, flavor compounds, very important kind of components, which on the end of the day will impact the wine in a big way. So most important thing about grapes is probably the most important part is for the winemaker is to decide when to pick grapes. So basically they would be going around harvest time every day in the vineyards around. They would be picking grapes, they would be chewing on them. They have small machines which can immediately tell amounts of sugar, but it's not all about sugar. It's about balance between sugar, acidity, tannins, and overall ripeness of the grapes. And then when that moment comes, that's the most important time. When it's hot, when it's harvest time, it's very easy that people miss that right moment, and then acidity in heat goes down and sugar level goes up, which means higher potential alcohol in finished wine. So basically, very, very sensitive, very important thing. But basically, lots of these people who are doing that for centuries are really passing down the informations and knowledge to the newer, younger generations. So vineyard year basically is bats developed in early morning, early spring. So that's around March in northern hemisphere, and September in southern hemisphere, like Australia, Argentina, and so on. So wine finally awakens up around that time, and then about 2 weeks later after that, the leaves starts to separate and to form, and then another 6 weeks after that, it's bud break, and then the flowering effects takes time. The size of eventual crop depends on pollination. Grapes are pollinated by wind. So depending on this is very crucial time basically for the every winemaker and vineyard, because it can, if it's frost, if it's bad weather, if it's too cold, then pollination might not happen the way how it should, and then either entire crop or good chunk of that could be destroyed even before everything starts. So around midsummer, there's something in French term called veraison, when grapes are actually starting to change color. That's the moment when actually sugar is started to be produced through photosynthesis with help of the sun, and with help from the roots of the grapes, of the vines. Photosynthesis happens through the green parts of the stomatas of the leaves, and then finally from that point, when grapes are changing color, it's all about producing sugar, and all efforts of the wine is concentrated on that. And then final harvest time, I was mentioning how important harvest time is about complete ripeness of the grapes, is nearly ready, and then we are ready for the making of the new wine. So let me just grab a little bit of water. So here we have a map of the world, which clearly shows where the wines are grown. Typically, you can see here Europe, you can see here USA, and then Southern Hemisphere. You can see the most of European vineyards, including Italy, France, Spain, Croatia, Greece, between 30 to 50 degrees north of north. So also Southern Hemisphere, that's Australia, New Zealand, Chile, South Africa, and so on. It lies between 30 to 50 south. So why 30 to 50 north, and why 30 to 50 south only, and not in between here? Because wine has its own requirements. It doesn't like too hot or too cold. Wine plants can grow like crazy. People are planting wine plants to cover their terraces on third or fourth floor. But really for the top quality grapes, it does need certain requirements, and that's not too hot and not too cold. It does need a bit of, certain amount of sunshine. It does need certain amount of water, and those parameters are found between 30 to 50 north and 30 to 50 south globally. So basically, with this global warming today, now UK, England lies on the 51st. So Champagne, as the most northern part in France, lies on the exactly 50th degrees, and that was considered for very many years like final line for the possible climatic grape growing of top quality grapes. So now Southern England is making world-class wines, 51st, you see just above 50 right here. And I'm not joking, if I told you this 10, 12 years ago, you would be laughing, but now England is producing world-class wines, especially sparkling wines made in the same way like Champagne. We're going to discuss how Champagne is made. And it's often in blind tasting, it's beating big names in Champagne like Moët Chandon, Veuve-Clicquot, and so on and so on. So it's now more like 28 to 51 north and 28 to 51 south of equator because of this global warming. So some countries are benefiting enormously with this global warming, like England, but some countries are not. If it's hot, it's getting hotter, and that's basically not too good news for wine. So styles of the wines, we have basically three major styles of the wines. It's so-called still wines, which means red, white, or rosé. Fortified wines, best known fortified wines are globally port and sherry, and we also have sparkling wines and champagne. Of course, only champagne made in Champagne region in France could be called champagne. These people are just too powerful and too rich, and they have protected the name. But in every major wine growing region around the world, similar kind of style of so-called traditional winemaking with second fermentation in the bottle, I might explain that in a minute, is used, but all of that could be called only sparkling wine. So only champagne in Champagne region can be called champagne. So white wine making, basically white wine making is in majority of the cases, not in all. White grapes are crushed, then juice released, skins are separated, and then clear juice is pressed here. Basically, we just ferment clear juice, not using skins. And then when it's fermentation finished, then either it's, if it's fresh young wine, white wine, it's going to be in stainless steel tank and bottled in the spring, or if it's more serious wine, it's going to be kept for some time in stainless steel tank and then transferred into oak barrels to add a bit more structure and maybe some different aromas, and then bottled after that. So white wine could be made from red and white grapes. If you squeeze red grapes, white juice would come out. Now, if you keep skins of red grapes in touch with juice, you're going to draw a little bit of color, as coloring pigments are found in the skins of red grapes. So red and white grapes are used for the white wine, but for the red wine, you can, of course, only make red wine from red grapes. So red wine making, harvesting grapes. Grapes are now crushed, and all of that with skins is transferred into stainless steel tanks for fermentation. When fermentation is finished, then wine is sometimes filtered if it's mass produced, sometimes it's non-filtered, which I like. And then if it's more serious wine, it's put into the oak barrels for the aging, usually any time between 12 months and 24 months. And then it's bottling, and then after some time spent in a bottle, it's ready for consumption. So only made from red grapes. Juice skins, sometimes whole bunches of grapes are used, and often, if it's more serious wine, oak aging as well. So fortified wines, we have lots of different types of fortified wines, but best known fortified wines are port and sherry. Sherry and port, two great styles of fortified wines. I especially like, I like them both, but the sherry is my favorite wine. especially dry sherry like Fino or Manzanilla. Importance of food, I was mentioning that in the beginning of this masterclass. Basically, tapas as a style of the food has been intentionally basically invented, if you like, to complement local Fino or Manzanilla. So basically tapa means saucer. So saucer would be put on top of the glass of sherry, and small saucer with small bits of food like manchego cheese, Iberico ham, olives, and all of that. And tapas is intentionally style of the food, which most of us like that style of the food. They produce specifically to complement local wine. So besides port and sherry, there's Madeira as well, quite unique, one of the longest lived wines on earth. Marsala as well from Sicily. Vermouth is more like used in liqueur, in combinations. And in Australia, there's Muscat as well, used for producing some sticky, sweet wines as well. So Champagne, I was mentioning Champagne could be called Champagne only if made in Champagne region in France. It's a very unique way how they make Champagne or sparkling wine in so-called traditional method. It used to was called method champagnaise, but now it's called method traditional. It would be written on the bottle. So basically they make basic wine as always, crushing the grapes, yeast, natural or added yeast are eating sugar from the grape juice. By eating sugar, they are producing alcohol and carbon dioxide and a bit of heat. So when they eat all of the sugar, they make basic wine, and that's how the wine is made. It's fairly simple. But now with Champagne, they add basic wine inside this Champagne bottle. They would add a bit more yeast and a bit more sugar, and then they would close that bottle. Now that initiates one more fermentation, so-called secondary fermentation, this time happening inside the bottle. Yeast are eating more sugar, making more alcohol and making more carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide in this case can't escape from closed bottle. It stays in there and in time integrates into the wine, and that's how we get bubbles. So also those yeast, when they finished eating sugar, they die, they stay inside the bottle, and they contribute in a big way to the flavors of Champagne. So most of the older vintage Champagnes are about yeasty, toasty, bready, biscuity kind of aromas. While second method, how people make sparkling wine is like, let's say, Prosecco. Most of the Prosecco is made in different method. Second fermentation doesn't take place inside the bottle. It takes place inside big, huge, sometimes stainless steel tanks. As soon as the yeast are finished with eating sugar, they are basically filtered out, removed, and Prosecco is bottled immediately under pressure. So Prosecco is not about yeasty, toasty, bready, biscuity like Champagne. Most of Champagnes, Prosecco is about fruity, aromatic, maybe peaches, green apple aromas, thanks to this method of non-yeast interference to add flavor and body and structure. So yeah, so you can see here, and then what they do, they just take them out. Usually that's done by machine. They have special kind of liquid which freezes this neck of the bottle. And what they do, they now put the bottles upright, and then all of these dead yeast comes into the neck of the bottle, and machine freezes that for in like 2 seconds, and then that's taken out by the pressure. So at this stage, they decide what style of Champagne is going to be. Is it going to be completely dry, so-called zero, no residual sugar at all, or brut? Brut has touch of sugar, or semi-sweet or sweet. And at this stage, depending on the market where they're going to export that, and at this stage, they add so-called liquor, the tirage, the additional wine with different levels of sweetness or no sweetness. And then that final cork, one with wire, is added and wine is ready. This process is called degorging. So yeah, so it's it's really amazing process of making champagne or sparkling wine in traditional method. One monk called Dom Perignon has been credited with inventing that process, but actually that is not true, because 30 years before he was appointed as a head cellar master in Epernay in France, Dom Perignon, 30 years before that, one British doctor has explained exact process of second fermentation in UK, and we have documents about that. I know the French are not very happy about that, but that's the fact. And yeah, but it's a great marketing tool for French. Right. So factors which make wines different. So location of the vineyard. You can see here very extreme location in Croatia. This is the best, accepted as the best vineyard, called Dingac. We're going to have one wine to taste from there. And yeah, lots of different factors makes big influence on the wines, like location of the vineyard, soil structure, aspect of the vineyard. You see, most of the best vineyards in the world are on very steep slopes. Why is that good? It's good because steeper the slope it is, better exposure to the sun, but also if the rain comes, water drains away very quickly. Wine plant does not like too much water. So too much water will not be good for the wines. Wine needs to penetrate and to develop large roots to find a little bit of water and all of these precious minerals and nutrients deep inside the soil. If the wine is in a flat, if the vineyard is in a flat land position with rich soil, lots of water, then it's not going to develop large roots. It's going to produce loads and loads of bunches of grapes, but then the quality would not be there. So aspect of the vineyard is very important. Soil structure as well. French have one amazing word, just single word, which explain all great about that. It's called terroir. Or in one word, aspect, soil structure, steepness, weather, all of that, and all of that is very, very important to produce top quality wine. So now, tasting wine. Tasting is very important. By tasting, you can have any wine you like. I'm going to start with this first wine. I'm going to explain that it's this one here. It's Kuve Grigorevich. And basically, let me just pour sample quickly. Tasting wine is very, very important, as I was mentioning. Why we taste wine? So we taste wine with aim to assess quality of the wine, but also by that fairly simple tasting process, which involves 3 steps, which is sight, sense of smell, and sense of taste in the mouth. We are able to tell quality of the wine, but also by that process, we are able to remember those wines. So yeah, if we pay attention to these first three steps, we are able to remember those wines, but also we are able to assess quality of the wine. So if you look at the wine, this is a young white wine. This is 2018. So most of the white wines, they start their life with this kind of color, very pale, light, lemony, greenish kind of color. What white wines do, they gain color as they age. So this wine will go in next couple of years towards more deeper yellow color, then gold, and then after that mahogany. So basically by looking at the color, we can tell age of the wine, and we can tell fairly accurately. So white wines, they gain color as they age. Red wines, they lose color, they do the opposite. So red wines start with powerful purple, almost bluish color when young, and they do lose color towards ruby, and then after that garnety, and then light brick orangey. So red wines lose color, and they form that sediment in the bottle. So often some red wines will have some, older red wines will have some sediment, and that is a combination of 2 things from grape skins of the red wines, coloring pigments and tannins found in skins of the red grapes. they literally just drop off the wine in the bottle as the red wine ages. And by dropping off coloring pigments, red wine loses color. By dropping off tannins, becomes softer and smoother. So that sediment, which we decant, that it's not harmful, but it's not tasty. That's why we decant old red wines. And that's the difference. And that's by the color we can tell fairly accurately age of the wine. Also, when we swirl the glass a little bit like that, there might be some marks on the side of the glass. In this case, not very many. This wine is 12%, but then sometimes we can try with some other more powerful wines. You can see lots of those marks. We call them tears or legs. In short, they are indication of alcohol in dry wines. So in short, more of them, you can see more alcohol in your glass. So in this case, 12%, you don't see very many. But later on, if you taste some more powerful wine, try to have a look and you'll see if it doesn't matter speed, it doesn't matter thickness of them. In short, more of them, more alcohol in dry wine. The only other thing they can indicate is sweetness in sweet wines. But today, generally more than 90% of all wines produced globally are dry. So very likely, if you don't know the wine, very likely it's going to be alcohol rather than sweetness. So now second step is to smell the wine. That's by far the most important part. We have amazing ability to remember up to, let's say, around 10,000 different smells. That's a huge number. In the mouth, we can taste only 5 things: sweetness, saltiness, acidity on the sides, bitterness at the back, and overall umami. So that's only mouth is very limited compared to nose, but nose is the most important part. By smelling of the wine, we are trying to put wines into different categories. If it's young wine, then it's going to be having primary, fresh, fruity, aromatic aromas. With a bit of aging, those fresh, fruity, primary aromas changes into so-called secondary or tertiary aromas, often involving like things like leather, farmyard, even forest floor. So secondary aromas, not fruity. So smell is by far the most important part. We do need to put our nose swirling, releases aromas really. Temperatures are also really important. White wines, 10 to 12 degrees Celsius is optimum for aromas to open up. Red wines, 16 to 18. Lighter the red wine, more towards white wines. So when we swirl the wine, when we put nose and we inhale deeply, then we can tell we have one very powerful tool right behind our nose. It's called olfactory bulb. So everything we smell, it goes behind our nose into the olfactory bulb, and then we get signals sent to our brain to tell us what it is. So after smelling, we finally get to taste wine. I was mentioning only 5 things we can detect in the mouth: sweetness and saltiness, very tip of the tongue; acidity on the sides from inside; bitterness at the back; and umami. Umami is Japanese invention. It's accepted as a 5th flavor nowadays. It's described as a combination of flavors, so it's not a single flavor, found in mature cheeses, truffle mushrooms, different wild mushrooms, meaty kind of savory flavors. So basically, when we taste wines in the mouth, we really need to take a small sip, and we need to swirl the wine around like brushing teeth to cover all these receptors of flavors at different parts, like this. So we have option at this time either to swallow the wine or to spit it out. If you are tasting lots of wines, it's wise to start spitting it out. But then there's one downside. There's something called length or finish. So the amount of time when we swallow the wine, amount of time we can feel the flavors in our throat lingering, indicates quality. Some very simple wines will disappear basically in a couple of minutes, in a couple of seconds, while some really top quality wines, you're going to feel flavors for a very long time. That's indication of quality. So now this wine has good acidity. My mouth is watering on the side. It's completely dry, no sweetness at the tip of the tongue. good acidity, medium plus, and it's good aftertaste. Really, it's kind of savory, fruity, interesting wine. So yeah, now when we do all of these 3 steps, we can make conclusion, and we have different choices about wine. Choices are bad, good, very good, or top premium class of wine. So for me, bad wine would be spoiled wine, corked wine, oxidized wine, that's surely bad, or wine where I can taste only one thing and nothing else. If one thing dominates over everything, be it acidity or something else, that's bad. What we want to have harmony in between acidity, in between fruitiness, in between alcohol as well, and also tannins in red wine. So we want harmony. If one thing is sticking out and dominates over everything else, that's bad. So for me, this is not bad wine. In my case, I think this is very good. It's not top premium class of the wine, but it's very good. Especially the wine like this would be very good with food. It's got good structure, good body, maybe. But what I think is piece of smoked salmon could be perfect with this wine. So yeah, tasting wine is really important. So especially if you are coming across new wines you haven't tasted before, that's the way how to assess quality. It's fairly simple. Takes a bit of practice. But also that way we are able to remember those wines. That's how we build kind of bank memories of the wines we are tasting, by applying this tasting process. So some of you have this wine, some of you have your own wine. So we have Croatian wines here, including, well, excluding only one wine here from Slovenia. So this is the first wine, Kuve Grgurevic. It's one small producer based on Pelješac Peninsula. It's 3 different grape varieties mixed there. It's made in summer style of the wine, 12% of alcohol, light. Now the next wine is Plavac Mali Grey, made in orange style of the wine, very unique, interesting style, getting more and more popular globally. Orange wines are very different than your standard wines, because winemaking method is that they use making of the red wines for the white grapes. So basically they keep skins and everything for very long fermentation, and depending on the grape variety they're using, that turns to be orange. Often Pinot Grigio or Plavac Mali Grey would be used for that. Malvasia is fantastic grape variety. It's native to Istria. Superb grape variety, great acidity, great minerality, and small producer called Walter Sirk. And we're going to have 3 wines from Pelješac Peninsula, all made from Plavac Mali grape variety, which is connected to Zinfandel. Lots of people thought for years that Zinfandel is American grape variety, but it's not. It comes from Croatia. One of the parents of Plavac Mali is Zinfandel. And Zinfandel originates in central Dalmatia. It's called Celjena over there. Somehow it has crossed Adriatic Sea to the southern Italy, to Puglia region, where it's called Primitivo, same grape variety. And then from there it has found its way to California, especially Napa, where it can produce superb wine. So Plavac Mali is like son of Zinfandel, or Celjena, which is his original name. So these are 3 different grape varieties, 3 different wines, same grape variety, Plavac Mali, 3 different locations. You can taste these wines at your own leisure, and any way you like now when you know the proper tasting process. So importance of food. Food is really, really important. We had yesterday really wine and food masterclass, and I think that was really successful, and lots of people tuned in and lots of people commented, and that's really, really interesting. So basically, a long time ago, people only definition of the wine and food good matching would be red wines with meat, white wine with fish, which is now highly outdated in a way, if you like, as color of the wine is not important at all. You can completely forget about color of the wine. What is important is basically the body of the wine needs to be matched with body of the food. So same body, so one does not overpower the other, but makes harmony. So winter type of food like stews, like meaty dishes, that's obviously full-bodied food. And obviously we are drinking more fuller-bodied, powerful red wines in the winter months. While summer months, especially if you are near to the sea somewhere, light food, white fish, light salads tend to ask for the lighter style of the wines. So basically same body. Body is described also as mouthfeel or impression you get when you taste wine. So what we want to have the same body of the both, so one does not overpower the other, but makes harmony. So second thing, which is very important, acidity in wine needs acidity in food. You can see here this freshly caught oysters. And often they would be served, especially in Croatia, in Stone near Dubrovnik, where it's a center for the oysters, only with lemon, just lemon juice. And then oysters with lemon, they do need acidity. They need basically acidity in wine. Acidity in food tends to bring acidity in wine down, and wine becomes less acidic and better combination. So that's really perfect. Often you would be serving champagne with oysters and lemon, and that's kind of classic match. Finally, also we need to take attention in regards to the flavor intensity in food. We have today lots of foods which are very high in flavor intensity, like Thai food, like Indian, like Chinese. Lots of people would be going for beer for that kind of food, but that's actually not the perfect match, because beer just refreshes our palate in between eating, while what we want to do with wine, we want really to that wine enhance food and food enhance wine to make that really better match and better product than separate ingredients. So I have discussed salty, acidic, bitterness, sweet, and umami in the mouth, really. But food, I don't think really intentionally that wine has been produced throughout history without thinking about food. Even today, the best bet if you go to any wine producing region would be local wine with local food, because that's what people have been mastering over the centuries. So yeah, before we move on, let's taste red wine. Red wine is different because it's got usually tannins, and Plavac Mali have very thick skins, which means lots of tannins and lots of color. And you can see in this wine, this is Plavac Mali by Miloš. It's 2016, 4 years old wine. So you can see by the color, it's not purple, it's losing color towards ruby and touch of garnety, maybe. So when we swirl this glass of wine, there should be some legs or tears, so-called, on the side, as this wine is 13% of alcohol, so slightly higher than previous wine. And here you can see some tears or legs. And let's smell, and let's see what can we smell in this wine. It's dark fruits, prunes, plums, dark chocolate, very complex, typical smell of Plavac Mali. So now, when we taste red wines, also we need to swirl them around and center for tannins, and tannins are very important for food as well. Gums. So when we swirl the wine, let's try to cover your gums as well. So when we do that, that really drying sensation, that's tannins. It dries your mouth completely. And tannins are great for two reasons. They are great for the long aging of the wine. Some of the top Bordeaux wines are not drinkable first 5, 6, 8 years because they're intentionally produced with lots of tannins, as that extend aging possibilities. but also tannins are great with protein-based food. Protein-based food is found in matured cheeses or meat. So that's why some good steak, charred steak with some tannic wine is just match made in heaven. So yeah, this is Plavatsmali, powerful, robust meats food, but it's in the same time delicious. It's more suitable. You just have to remember miserable winter day, and wine like this with some steak, and your day would become much, much better. So let's move on now. My next tasting would be July 18th. Very quite unique masterclass, wine and music. Can music enhance wine? Can music change our perception of the wine in regards to the acidity or structure or tannins or enjoyment? I believe it can. There has been numerous researchers into this theme, and we're gonna have 6 wines to taste with 6 different pieces of music, and we're gonna check is that right thing to do, and can music enhance wine in that way? We have a sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of touch, sense of hearing as well. So can sense of hearing in this case influence wine and make it better in the same way like food do? So we can check that on my next tasting masterclass, which is planned for Saturday, July 18th. So any questions? Let me check questions. There is some questions as well. Okay, so questions. Okay, how rosé wine is made? Yes, I did not explain process of the rosé wines in details. Rosé wine is a great style of the wine. Basically, in the past, it was considered like ladies' drink. Men would not touch that, but basically, it's fantastic style of the wine. Lots of people thought rosé is made from the leftover of good red wine making. So whatever's left, it's put into the rosé wine. But basically, that's not true. Rosé wine is made from red grapes only. When you squeeze red grapes, I was mentioning, white juice comes out. And what they do, they keep skins in touch with juice for a very short period of time. It's hours, not days. So a couple of hours, just to draw a little bit of that beautiful rosé color. And what they do, they separate skins and then ferment wine as a white wine. So rosé is fantastic style of the wine, especially with light food, especially with summer. And consumption of rosé globally is going sky high in the last couple of years. So superb style of the wine. So I will conclude at this. So if you hope you enjoyed this masterclass, hope you will remember to apply the wine tasting process I explained, which is very important. That would increase your enjoyment in wines, and hope you're gonna be and hope you will be joining me for future masterclasses which are planned in the next month or so. There's 3 or 4 brand new masterclasses already on my website, tasteofvino.com. Also, if you like any of the wines, I am importing wines, I am selling wines. So please use is please use my website to check regularly what's happening, and have a great evening, and I might see you at some stage later on. Thank you, and have a good evening.